Last year, 1 month into the season, I released the top 10 players of the regular season thus far. But today, we will be finalizing that list and contrasting it to my list from earlier on in the year. And we will be doing one more list after the 2025 playoffs are over and contrasting it yet again to get our official top 10 players of the 2025 season. But for now, here are your top 10 players of the 2025 regular season. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. I do want to put a few qualifiers at the top of this video. First things first, in order to qualify, you do need to be playing at least 40 plus games. I recognize the NBA has the 65 game marker, but I don't want to penalize injuries too much because I do want to actually encapsulate who was the best, at least when they were actually available. 40 plus games, you cross the threshold. Anything less than that, you just weren't relevant enough this season. Also, this again is just based on who's been better this regular season. It doesn't necessarily mean one player is actually better than the other, rather that one is just having the better season, or maybe someone here is having a down season from their usual expectation. For example, Luka Doncic is much lower on this list than he would typically be on one of my lists back on, a couple of years ago. I think he's going to bounce back and be just fine, and he's not going to be where he is ranked currently. So bear that in mind. I'm not necessarily saying one of these players is better than the other, just that they had the better season. Also, another thing, don't focus too much from spot to spot. Look more in just the general area where a player's name is, because spot to spot, it usually is a pretty arbitrary thing that made me make that choice. Not always, but mostly. With that in mind, let's go ahead and get into some honorable mentions. The 5 names that I have just outside of the top 10. I go back and forth as to who Cleveland's best player is all the time, which I actually think is a marker of a very well-built team. But I think there is a very strong case to be made in the favor of 3 different guys. Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell all have a case, and it kind of just depends on what you value more. In the case of Evan, who I personally believe has been their best player this year, he obviously has some offensive limitations that those guys do not, but those guys are not generational defensive players who are damn near possibly the defensive player of the year. Darius Garland this year has taken up, honestly, more of an offensive role than Donovan Mitchell, but I also have the historical context of the past few years of just thinking that and understanding that Donovan Mitchell was better than both Garland and Mobley. So if you're asking me who is their best player, I would default to Donovan Mitchell. But if you asked me who their best player has been, I would either say Evan Mobley or Darius Garland. So that is in large part because Donovan has sacrificed a lot of his offensive role here, and that's super commendable. But at the end of the day, I am going to rank you as having a worse regular season if you sacrificed so your opponent could have a better regular season. They still had a better regular season. I have 3 Cavaliers in here, and then I have Jaren Jackson Jr. of the Memphis Grizzlies and Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Ant is ranked at 11, Mobley at 12, Jaren at 13, Garland at 14, and Mitchell at 15. If there are some honorable mentions that you wish were in here, just remember, these are honorable mentions. You could also throw Brunson and Cat in this conversation as well. Probably a few other guys, but these are honorable mentions. Let's not fight about that. Fight me on the other stuff, but these are just honorable mentions. So we're going to go into our top 10 here. And remember how I said Luka is much lower than I would have him typically over the past few years? Luka Doncic is coming in at number 10. The fact of the matter is he's played over 40 games and he's still putting up 27, 8, and 9 as his averages for the year. Now, our understanding of Luka is that somehow that's not even that impressive for him. Last year, he averaged 33, 8, and 9. It was some of the best true shooting in the league. This year, it's not even just that his scoring production has dipped, but his efficiency has dipped along with it. I don't think this is really anything that's his fault. He's been dealing with an injury. He's been dealing with the turmoil of this trade going down. And he also had a reduced offensive role in Dallas towards the start of the year. That is the thing that is going to get left out of this entire story because it's just some basketball nerd shit that no one really cares about. But I think the Dallas Mavericks were finally on the right path in terms of how they utilize Luka Doncic towards making him a more efficient and useful player who does not have to overexert himself. His numbers were down across the board in terms of per game stats, but his usage percentage was super down. His percentage of his shots that were assisted were way, way, way up. And I really liked how that play style was influencing his game. Since going to Los Angeles, he has taken on more on-ball responsibilities than he did with Dallas, but I also feel like he was winding up with that towards Dallas because he wasn't in the best shape to start the year. If we actually look at where I had Luka at the start of the year, definitely nowhere near the top 5 that he is typically inarguably in. So at number 10, we have Luka. I have no doubt in my mind that next year he will be right back in top 3 conversations. At number 9, we have the man that was traded for him, Anthony Davis. I would argue that AD in his limited games as well, playing just a little over 40 himself, is not as good as Luka's height, but the foundation, the floor that his defense brings to teams, it's just so good. And then on top of that, his scoring, especially earlier on in the year, was fucking phenomenal. He was towards the top of the list early on, but he's slipped a little bit just because he's played less. The scoring slowed down a good amount as the year went along. He was at damn near 30 points per game for like the first month of the season. But since then, not gonna maintain that place, but still manages to finish in the top 10. At 8 is somebody who I was afraid that I wouldn't even be able to put on this list based on earlier in the year, and he certainly wasn't on it earlier in the year, and that is Stephen Curry. Steph, since the Jimmy Butler trade, but also leading into it, has been on a complete heater. A lot of people are just entirely attributing Steph's recent performance to Jimmy, and I do think it has been in large part thanks to him. However, to me, there is no doubt in my mind that Stephen Curry had this. He just needed to not be in the most ridiculously bad situation for a player like him to be in. To have a context where at like 34, 35 years old, how old is Steph at this point? He's 36, yeah. Dude's old as shit, has a long history of injuries. He has, in large part, a game that benefits from having a lot of off-ball shit. But nobody who's on the ball on the team is particularly strong, so he ends up having a higher percentage of his shots coming off of the dribble, less assisted opportunities, less completely clean looks, and Jimmy has added to that, but I also would argue that what Jimmy has added to that is just the baseline expectation of any other NBA team to actually have a secondary star player to bring attention away from your primary star player. Steph still manages to crack this list. He, at this point, is hitting the most threes, taking the most threes in the NBA, and is at 40% while doing that. So shout out to Steph Curry, my goat, my baby boy. I love him. My baby boy is over a decade older than me, but we're gonna ignore that. At number 7, I have Victor Wembanyama. Victor was a player that I almost completely forgot on this list. That would have been a huge mistake because he was playing like top 5 level when he was here before he got hurt. And I would probably say, if I had to guess, that he would have finished in my top 5 if not for the fact that he played 40 games. I kind of just have to give more of an edge towards the player who played the full season. So Victor is down here at 7, but I already think I proclaimed that if it's not this next season, the season after it, Victor will very much be coming for the title of best player in the NBA. I think if I had to guess, just to be conservative about it, I would say 2 years from now rather than 1. But I don't know. I'm not blowing anyone's mind by saying that Victor Wembanyama has ridiculous potential, but I am saying that he will manage to defy the already high expectations around him. At least I feel that way, so long as this blood clot issue does not end up being anything long-term, which, based on everything I've heard, I'm certainly no doctor, but it seems like it's correct. So that he's just going to be fine, and that's good. Love Victor Wembanyama. Moving on to number 6, we have Cade Cunningham. This might be a little high. I can understand that, but I am very much factoring just the strength of the individual season, also the context of what he was coming from before this. The Pistons are slated to have one of the largest win-to-loss change over one season, one of the largest that has ever happened in NBA history. And that is entirely because Cade Cunningham, in the same way that I said about Steph, where it's like, yeah, do you want to argue against him that he just got better because he finally had a competent roster around him? I guess. But I tend to judge players based on what they can do with a competent roster around them, not what they can do with a completely dog shit one. So I'm giving Cade Cunningham that credit for, yes, he's played like a superstar player ever since they actually put decent shooting and scoring ability around him. It didn't take some of the top couple of players in the league. It took a bunch of guys that they got for nothing. Tim Hardaway Jr. was a salary dump move. They got Malik Beasley for like $5 million. They got Tobias Harris for like $20 million a year, and that's perfectly serviceable for a guy who's going to be scoring in the mid to high teens per game. They had so much of that in terms of the offense, off-season additions, and then you also had a couple of players coming into their own like Duren and Ivy and Asar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, to give him that credit as well. There is so much about the Pistons roster that got better, and you can highlight that as a big reason why they improved, but the only way they were going to improve at the degree in which they did was by Cade Cunningham being a fucking dog. 6'7", 6'6", maybe even 6'8"-ish. I don't remember what his exact height is, but he's a tall-ass point guard, built super tough, almost entirely exists on buckets, which I do think his lack of free throw attempts, part of it is just that he doesn't have a very good whistle. I've definitely seen a good handful of clips of him just not getting the right calls. Moreover, he just isn't the type of guy who likes to go to the free throw line. He doesn't lean into contact. And I don't even mean in a foul baity way. I just mean like embracing the contact because you know it will get you to the line. Getting to the free throw line is a facet of any high volume scorer, pretty much. And he doesn't really have that facet to his game. And I would argue that if he was a, 8 to 9 free throw attempts per game guy, then it wouldn't even be controversial for me to have Cade Cunningham as high as I do. But his offensive game, he still has not the best efficiency. It could be better for sure. The fact that he was in the three-point contest baffled me because I'm still nowhere near thinking he's like a truly elite three-point shooter. This year he's at 35%. It was a little better when he was in that three-point contest, but that shit should just have never happened. Cade Cunningham, I'm giving him a lot of credit, maybe more than I should, but I don't know. It's hard for me to say that anybody has individually played better than him other than the guys that I have in the top 5. Now at number 5, I can't believe I am saying this, but at the age of 40, in season 22 or 23, LeBron James is a top 5 player of the regular season. That is bonkers. It actually is, and because there is no all-NBA team position limitations anymore, even if there were, I think he would still get in. No, there'd be one guard differential. There'd be, at least based on my list, there'd be 3 forwards, 1 guard, and 1 center. But it doesn't matter. The position limitations do not exist, and LeBron James might be all NBA first team. It depends if he gets injured again this year, because I think he's really close to missing the 65 games played threshold. But if he crosses that line, at the bare minimum, I'm expecting all NBA second team. And like, I can't emphasize enough, dude, especially since the guy turned 40, he's been remarkable. Overall, on the year, he's averaging 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 8.5 assists on top of a steal. 51, 38, 76 splits. We know LeBron doesn't shoot free throws well. That's nothing new. Since turning 40, he's at 26, 8, and 8. He is shooting 41% from 3, 54% from the field, and 78% from the line. So I guess the difference in the stats actually does not end up being that large because this is overall 30 games out of the 59 that he's played this year. But you get my point. LeBron, I can't believe it. It's not even just that his offense is this good. He has been a good defender, especially since this Luka deal went down. And I also can't emphasize enough that LeBron is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. Again, it's something that kind of baffles me because it's like, do you have limitations? Because it seems like you don't. But literally, I mean, his last 2 years, he's a 40% three-point shooter on 5.5 attempts per game. He regularly takes pull-up three-pointers. I don't even think his assisted percentage is super crazy. I would guess it's in the 70s on three-pointers. Yeah, he's at 66% of his threes assisted, 38% of his twos. Big-time pull-up shooter, regularly takes them from super deep. Also, like a super high percentage catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. His volume could be higher to get him into truly like the top 5, top 10 shooters in the league conversation. I mean, he's in the top 20 though. like undeniably. And to be one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA at the age of 40 after not being a good shooter for a very large chunk of your career, and to be as good defensively as he's been, I'm just awestruck at LeBron James and what he is capable of doing. I believe he was like he wasn't even in the top 10 towards the start of the year because he started the year very, very terrible. Anyways, beyond that, now we get into our top four, and I will say, I think there's a distinction between the top four and everybody else. Number four, we have Jayson Tatum. He's a kind of guy that people like to lie or slip other people over him, especially in a regular season, where the big problem with him is just that his box score counting stats beyond his rebounds or his points per game are not that crazy. His points per game also slowly dipped as the season went along, but his versatility as a defender, his playmaking leap, because he's over 6 assists per game this year. He's basically the point guard of that team, and I think he does not get enough credit for that, while also being their lead and by far and away, I don't care what you say, their best shot creator. Jayson Tatum, he's just too good at the floor aspects of the game, which a lot of people do not care about. That the stuff that wins you games on the margins regularly gets left out of the conversation among the top players in the league, but he does the stuff on the margins so well that the fact that he's probably not a top 5 or 6 offensive player, it makes him in that conversation. I'm also realizing just now I did not put Kevin Durant in my honorable mentions. I don't think I would put him in the top 10, maybe over Luka, but he'd be very bordering on that conversation. He could definitely be there. My mistake on forgetting him. That truly was not me trying to be a hater, but Kevin Durant deserves a seat at this table as well, because while I do hate aspects of his game, and I do think he can be overrated because his all-around game is not that phenomenal, his defense this year has stepped up, and he's still a bucket. So sorry for the disrespect, Kevin Durant, but, you know, kind of my gig at this point. At number 3, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo. He has been a victim of just being the 3rd or 4th guy in the MVP race every single fucking year. So once again, we have a season where Giannis is putting up 30, 12, and 6. And it's like, yeah, dude, that's crazy, Giannis. Sorry, but you're still the 3rd best player in the NBA right now. I think it says a lot about the talent that we have in this league. Pretty obvious who my number 1 and number 2 are going to be. However, I am being a coward. I am copping out here, and I am saying that my 1A is Nikola Jokic and my 1B is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The reason for this, Jokic is the best player between the two of them, and this is the distinction between best player and better season. Jokic is the best player. I would argue SGA's season has been just as good, and given the context of his team, that is why I believe he should win MVP. When I actually talked about this, when the MVP race heated up a lot, my reaction was a little too, in the moment, a little too aggressive, which, you know, I've had that problem a couple of times now. But like, the thing is, it always seems like in an MVP debate, you're gonna have to say bad things about a player who you don't want to have to say bad things about. And Nikola Jokic is someone who I have been dick riding for years now, but because I like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander too, I have to hate on him, I guess, or vice versa. If I'm not a real Jokic fan, if I'm not hating on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, it's like, man, I like all-time great basketball players, and I'm rooting for them to be successful for the sake of the league and for the sake of my enjoyment. And I love watching both of them play. They are both all-time great talents. Jokic is obviously much higher, and I think will retire as a far exceeding all-time great player. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is having one of the best scoring seasons that we have ever seen, period. Not to mention just from a guard, we are seeing all-time great level playmaking from Nikola Jokic, as we always do. There is so much great shit happening between these two players. I think you could call it a coin toss who's been better this year. Again, repeat this line one final time. Jokic is better than Shai. Shai and Jokic have had pretty close to equal performances in the regular season, so I think you could give the MVP to either of them, and my perspective has always been give it to the guy who doesn't have one if you think it's pretty damn close between the two of them. I understand why that takes unpopular. I'm not sitting here and acting like it's the way everybody else should view things. It's just simply the way that I am. But with that said, My top 10 players of the 2025 regular season are Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, LeBron James, Cade Cunningham, Victor Wembanyama, Stephen Curry, Anthony Davis, and Luka Doncic. With our honorable mentions being Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell. I will now compare this to last year's list, where at about a month into the NBA season, the top 10 was Nikola Jokic at 1, Giannis at 2, Tatum at 3, 3B being Anthony Davis, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at number 5. I had Ant at 6, Kevin Durant at 7. Here's a real indicator of how early on in the year we are. We had Franz Wagner at number 8 because he started the year on a crazy heater. Luka Doncic at 9, so he's actually gone down over time, which I would not have guessed, but we know the circumstances around him this year. Jaren Jackson Jr. at number 10, Victor Wembanyama at number 11, Cat at 12, LeBron 13. Look at how much he managed to jump to start the year. I was making videos like, do we think it's over? Are we done with superstar LeBron? Is he officially in the like mid-tier all-star category? But no, he bounced back immediately. De'Aaron Fox 14, Jalen Brunson 15, LaMelo Ball at 16. Yeah, lost the plot on that one. I was a big LaMelo guy. This year's just been weird. He just needs to get out of Charlotte. That's the primary thing. That is the top 10 players of the 2025 regular season. We will be seeing what this list looks like after the postseason. I think that is the quintessential list of the year because I think the top 10 of the year should include the playoffs. So we'll see how this list shakes up, how my opinions change as time goes on. Let me know what your top 10 list is in the comment section below. But that is it. Goodbye.